And we've cut across to breaking news coming in as we see Free Kashmir posters. Free Kashmir posters that are being flashed in Mumbai. This even as clashes that continue in Kolkata, where cops are now facing pepper spray. All right, Abhishek Kapoor, our executive editor, has more details on this. Quickly bringing him in. Abhishek, what more are you picking up?
Well, Suesha, what we are gathering is that these are protesters who were essentially gathering to continue with their protests as they have been going on across the country about CAA, about NRC, about NPR, and of course, in the context of last 24 hours, in the context of JNU as well. But what is important is these posters which drew the attention of some social media influencers, I would say, and that's how it has come out. And while we check the visuals, it's clear that there are people motivated enough to think that Kashmir is under some kind of occupation and that it needs to be freed. Now, this is similar to the Azadi slogans that took place in Jammu, in JNU. And this is a language which perhaps suits our enemy and neighbor across the western border. So these are the protesters who, on the one hand, think that by holding a national flag during protests, they are professing some kind of patriotism. But with these kind of posters, they indulge in an act which really buttresses the claims made by our enemy about whatever is happening in Kashmir. So obviously, it's a case of misplaced priorities, as we see in these pictures. And not just misplaced priorities, it seems it's a case of direct provocation, where on the pretext of CAA, which has nothing to do with Kashmir, they are bringing in these kind of posters about Free Kashmir, essentially speaking the language which helps our enemy.
Absolutely, Abhishek, and with the kind of details that we are getting, it seems like there is a clear pattern. It is pre-planned. It is a well-coordinated strategy to build an anti-India narrative. And all these forces that are now colluding together in the aim to corner the government. Is that what the intention is, Abhishek?
Well, it seems so. I mean, Suesha, we need to really find out who exactly are these organizers, who exactly are these protesters. As I said, it's an amalgam of all the issues which has led to these kind of protests. It begins with CAA. When they can't prove their facts on CAA, they move on to NRC. When they can't prove their facts on NRC, they move to NPR. When they can't prove their facts on NPR, they move to JNU. And when they can't prove their facts on JNU, they move to Free Kashmir. Now, isolated incidents perhaps could have been seen with some indulgence. But what is emerging is a pattern from Jamia to Selampur to Meerut to Muzaffarnagar to now even Mumbai, and we saw yesterday in Defcol in Delhi. It's a clear case of some forces really coming together to make sure that the nation remains on the boil. It serves, certain agendas outside India to perhaps paint India in a certain picture, but particularly on this issue of Free Kashmir banner emerging at a protest which is about CAA and NRC, essentially shows that there are some people within, or certain elements within these protesters who perhaps, I don't know whether there is an intention, but they seem to be helping the enemy narrative.
Absolutely, Abhishek, and continue to tell us about these sporadic incidents that we are witnessing in the country at this point, talking about the protests that are happening in Mumbai, which were silent protests, but we see the kind of placards that are being flashed there, even in Bengal, of the clashes that we've just witnessed a short while back. How do you look at the bigger picture, Abhishek?
Well, Suesha, it's very clear. What we are seeing is an orchestrated attempt at compromising the standing of the government and the sovereign will of the parliament, I would say, because in a sense, the Citizenship Amendment Act, which is now a law till the time that the Supreme Court educates on it, is a will of the parliament and hence of the people, a majority of the people. Almost 50 hours of debate went into it. Almost, I believe between Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, nearly 80 members of parliament speaking on it, expressing their mind on it, and subsequent to which it was passed by a majority in both the houses. So for these protesters to begin with CAA, which again is the will of the majority through the Parliament of India, and then to move on to NRC because they can't prove that they have the facts on CAA, then to move on to NPR, and then to again bring in Kashmir, and to use this kind of poster. I mean, this is preposterous. You remember 2016, the JNU protests began with the Azadi slogans about Kashmir. Kashmir has been an integral part of India since 1947, the day of accession, and remains so. Whatever administrative changes have been made essentially to improve governance on the ground and to make sure that there is no handle with the enemy in terms of fomenting terrorism. But for these people to actually project this decision again, passed by the will of people of India through the parliament as some kind of occupation, is really an act of treachery, is an act of sedition, I would say, and irrespective of whether they understand the intention or they understand the impact of this in terms of helping the enemy narrative, someone should be held to account for these kind of posters being held in Mumbai at the gateway of India protests. And as we have been saying, that this is not an isolated incident, this is not an isolated protest. It has to be seen connected with what has happened in the JNU over the last, not 24 hours actually, over the last 7 days a week. Because remember, whatever has happened yesterday by way of violence on the campus had its genesis in the manner in which a certain section of students owing their allegiance to the left lobby have denied registration of hostels within the campus to students, and that really led to emotions reaching a level where these kind of clashes took place. Irrespective of, we are not passing judgment as to which side really started it and which side escalated it. But the fact of the matter is that attempt has been made to compromise the standing of the government of the day in the eyes of the people by perhaps fomenting trouble from Jamia to Srilampur to JNU to now Mumbai we see.
Absolutely, Abhishek. There seems to be a clear pattern. Even at Republic, we are trying to join the dots, really to investigate what the truth is behind all these violent protests that we have been witnessing for the past so many days, and we'll continue to do so. Abhishek, stay with us.